Welcome to Meet the Eatmons Endangered Species podcast. We're your hosts, Curtis and Spring Eatman, and we're excited to be here with you all today. This is our podcast where we talk about how we inspire, uplift, and spotlight families, individuals, people that we think that are doing things that are special in the world. And today, what we're going to talk about, we've been on the topic of couples, relationships, all these things, which are really important. So what are we talking about today?
I mean, honestly, like how often do you speak to your partner and it feels like you guys are speaking two different languages?
Yes.
Like it almost feels like you're talking, but like nothing's landing at all.
Yeah.
Like, or even worse, like it starts an argument. Mm-hmm. Right. So, we believe that to have a healthy relationship, it starts with the foundation of communication. And we 100% believe in this episode that we're going to be talking about right now, that this talk is going to be able to help you not just communicate, but connect on a whole different level. So
I love it.
yeah,
I love it.
let's get right into it. Let's get right into it. My first question for you, though, is really simple. You ready? Are your words building a bridge or a wall when you're communicating?
Mm-hmm. That's such a really good point, because I think that a lot of times we think we're building a bridge. That's the point of why we came to you, to communicate, but we're only using our communication style. And to the other person, we're building a wall, and we wonder why our bridge is hitting a wall.
Okay. What a visual. Okay. Gotcha.
If that makes sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's a thing that's so important. In relationships, it's like we're speaking literally two different languages because of the fact that we come from two different worlds, two different perspectives, all the things. And so for us to just jump in and try to get you to see my right, because in the conversation we have to remember that both people's truth are right to them.
For sure.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
To them, they're both right. Right? So you're trying to get somebody to drop their conviction, hear what you have to say, and then be able to find either a way for you guys to make a whole different truth together,
Yeah.
or for you to be able to bridge the gap for them to come over to your side. And so sometimes I think we're too aggressive in the way that we're communicating. We are just expecting that our right is the only right.
Okay.
Not willing to hear the other person out and hear where they're coming from and seek to understand, not just to be understood.
Okay.
We just want everything on our terms. But the thing is that if you married the exact same person as you and they have the same exact view as
How
you,
boring.
that would be such a terrible, boring relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so our differences complement us, but sometimes if we're not communicating well, then they'll also stop us. What do you think?
I think it comes down to when you are communicating, are you throwing daggers to help them or to hurt them?
So how do you throw a dagger to help?
I think the saying that iron sharpens iron.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So in my opinion, when you're throwing a dagger to help, it's to sharpen them.
Okay.
All right.
So when you're saying daggers, I'm imagining that you're throwing daggers at like a wall and it's
Yeah.
helping me climb the wall to get to your side.
See,
Is that what you're trying to say?
Hey, that's the way we bring both truths together right there. You just did it.
I'm like, don't throw a dagger at me. That ain't helpful.
It is. But I am here to sharpen you, to cut off anything that was a lie
Yeah,
around you, right?
okay, I got you.
Right? And so that's what I mean by that, right? So I think it's important just to make sure that the intent of the conversation is only to help, not to hurt. And I think
Yes.
most people's intention is they're throwing the dagger to hurt somebody versus let me throw the dagger to hurt somebody else around you that's trying to hurt you.
Yes, I hear you on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, building that bridge is really important, and it's just about sitting down together and coming to a conclusion and being able to hear both sides,
Okay.
understand both sides, like listen, try to understand where they're coming from, even if it's different than what you have to say, and then figure out, okay, I could see how you got there. This is where I'm at. How can we meet ourselves in the middle? I think that's one of the most important things.
I agree.
So what would you say are some action steps for that?
I think next time you get in a heated conversation, stop, number one. And instead of saying you always, right? Because that's usually the first, statement someone's going to say when they're feeling, I guess you would say threatened, is that you always say this, or you always have to do that, or you always. Instead of saying you always, how about saying I feel this is what's going on?
Right.
So express how you feel in the scenario and lower your tone. I
Yes.
think it's very, very important that you lower your vibration and the tone if you want someone to understand how you feel. The higher your tone goes and the higher vibration, when you say, I feel this way, it's more aggressive. So now the other person feels they're going to be defensive because they feel a lot of pressure now.
Right.
And so I think those are the biggest things I would say as
You
call
know,
and action
I
steps.
think I think what you said here is a very big point because number one, you have to like work on communicating in a way that you own what you're saying. Nobody can ever make you anything. They can't make you feel, they can't make you
No.
do. You have to own your own emotions and say, hey, when that happened, I felt like X, Y, and Z. So it's I statements instead of you statements because
Yes.
when it's a you thing and I'm pointing at you, I'm building my wall up,
You are.
right? I can't hear what you have to say.
Or throwing a dagger at me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's also what you said is regulating your emotions is really important as well because like you said, bring your tone down, but also on the other side of okay, maybe somebody is aggressive and they're yelling, what about the person that's overly emotional and then they are crying and this and that and then it starts to manipulate the other person
Ooh, yeah.
to drop their point of view to
Right.
because they feel bad that the other person is becoming emotional.
Wow.
So I think like so how do you handle that if it feels like you're trying to be heard but the other person they're so wrapped up in how they feel that they just all feel so attacked every time everything becomes just this pool of tears and I can't get anything across. How do
Yeah.
you navigate that?
I think it's very difficult. I think you may need a mediator on this one. Because what's going to start to happen is if the person that's trying to explain how they feel, but they feel like they're being manipulated in that situation, they're going to stop explaining. They're going to feel like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to feel manipulated at the end of the conversation anyways. All right. Or we're going to get wrapped in the emotion where nothing's going to be said, or even what I was trying to explain, you're not going to receive it anyway. So why should I even talk about it? So at that point, if you're at that point already, you need to call some reinforcements.
Right. I think
Yeah.
another good healthy tool is like if you cannot seem to get through a conversation without it becoming an emotional explosion, whether that be in anger or tears or whatever it is,
Yeah.
maybe take a moment, write it down, and then maybe you can because when you write it down, you can reread it, erase it,
Yeah.
fix it,
Yeah.
write it again to make it sound not attacking the other person. Then you can sit down, hand each other the letters, you read it, I read it. Now we've heard each other all the way through. Take a moment, process it. Then we can come back together and try to communicate about what we received from each other's letters.
I like that.
I think that's also a good tip. So what about listening with your third ear?
Okay, we got.
So we got one, we got two, right?
Yeah,
So what's
okay.
the third ear? What's the third ear?
I mean, it must be something that connected you guys in the first place, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So is that your heart?
Listen with your heart.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it sounded like that, but I like your version though. I'll take your version. All right.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
have to listen with your heart sometimes.
I think that's important, because sometimes what is said is not what's meant.
Right. And
Yeah.
being able to give each other that grace.
Yeah. And I think the whole point of being in a relationship is to be able to offer that grace because you do love them. Right. Versus if there was no connection, no communication, no relationship, it was, more on the colder side of things. Like I just know, like I don't really know you like that. Then I'm not going to give you that much grace because I don't really know your intentions. I don't really know that you really care for me. And I think the more that someone knows that you care, the more that you can say, oh, they probably didn't mean it like that. Let me give them grace on that aspect.
That's so big and so good
Yeah.
to practice giving grace and
hard.
just saying, you know what, I'm going to assume that they didn't mean it like that.
Yeah.
Because we do assume in conversations all the time, but we're
we do.
consistently assuming they meant it in the harshest way possible.
Right.
So instead of that assumption, flipping it the other way and giving it grace and saying, I'm going to assume that they didn't mean it that way. I'm taking it wrong. I'm not understanding something still that I need to, maybe circle back and try to get more understanding as to why, what they meant, because I'm sure they didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's huge. And I think also, and if you feel that the intention of it was maybe hurtful, whatever it is, the question also has to be asked is, why are they in that state?
Right.
And so if I really care about them that much, then I want to get to understand why they're in their state versus why they're so angry. Why is it affecting me? Versus let me see how I can help them get out into a better state, because they don't usually talk to me like that.
Right.
Or they usually are not like that. So what's going on if that's, being repetitive in that aspect? So
Yeah, so like practicing empathy, going and putting yourself in their shoes and saying, okay, where is this coming from? Why is it that they're coming from this place, and really trying to dial it back? I think also acknowledging their emotions is very important
Right.
when you're in a conversation, not just pretending like, hey, that's not, like you're gonna have to get over that, but also just acknowledging their emotions, being present in that situation, and also making sure that you're having the bridge of active listening to action listening.
I like that. Active to action. That's good.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example
Yeah.
of active listening to action.
Yes.
So like, for example, let's say that you tell me I feel unappreciated, or your partner says I feel unappreciated. Well, active listening would be, well, I hear that you feel unappreciated. Well, and I want to understand a little bit more how you feel and what's making you feel that way. So can you tell me more? That would be active listening.
Right.
Because I pause, I'm listening, I'm letting you know that, like, you're my world right now. I'm intently only listening to you.
No distraction.
No distraction.
Yeah.
You got my uninvited attention, right? Undivided attention, in essence. So that's active listening. Now, how do I take it to action is, well, now I understand that you do feel unappreciated. So I'm acknowledging again that you feel unappreciated. And would it help if I set up a time on a weekly basis for us to come back around to make sure I'm doing the right thing, to make sure you are feeling more appreciated?
Yes. So great. Active to action. Because I think a lot of times in relationships, we do start with like wanting to listen. So we're in active listening.
Right.
But then we fail sometimes to move it into action listening, like listening for the solution, and creating a plan around attacking that emotion that they're giving you. Like, okay, yeah, so let me make a solution to this, and let's figure out how to bridge the gap and get to the place that we want to be.
Can I play a little devil's advocate on this one?
Okay,
go ahead. I
ahead.
know a lot of men feel about this one. All right, so like, what if, because we're very solution driven, men are,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so we're actively listening to do action all the time. That's how we're built, right? But what happens if we're actively listening to provide an action that's not wanted?
Okay,
Because most
that's
women
good.
don't want
That's very good.
don't want a solution. They just want to be able to explain their feelings in that time, and you just need to be able to let us know what that is.
Right.
But automatically, I'm listening for what? Solution. Like, can we just get to the point where I give you the solution, action? So what if there's not, I guess you would say, you're not explaining with the intent of having action?
I think that's super good, but I think it's just always good to ask those clarifying questions.
Okay.
In communication, clarifying consistently throughout the conversation is a good thing.
I agree.
So ask the clarifying question, like, okay, let me ask you, are we listening to because you want me to help you do something about this, or do you want me to just hear you and listen to you and receive what you're saying? Then those are two different things. I
Yes.
think action listening is appropriate when your spouse is conveying something that they are, that needs to be changed for them to feel heard, understood, feel safe, those kinds of things.
Like
Like,
that,
hey, I need to feel, appreciated, like you said. That's an action listening topic. But if I'm just telling you about my day and I'm sharing with you that my friend Sally, frustrated me today because X, Y, and Z, there's not really a need for you to jump in with action listening
agree.
in this topic. I just want you to hear me and listen to what I'm saying and have empathy for where I'm at emotionally.
So basically, we really got to read the room and
Read the room,
read the
baby,
room
which
and
brings us to
active listening.
yes,
Okay.
which brings us to the next topic is,
Okay.
do you understand the power of presence?
Okay.
Body language. Are you listening to the things are you reading between the lines? Are you able to read between those lines, baby? Because especially for women, there's a lot of opportunities for men to be able to read between the lines, right? Read between the lines of what's being said and what's not being said. And then also read between the lines of the nonverbal. of
It's a
the
lot of
body
those.
language communication, right?
Yeah.
So in this area, what would you say that people need to understand about understanding the power of presence?
I think yes. Well, because everybody operates different.
Right.
Some people speak with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
Some people,
Me, you girl.
yeah, your girls speak with their hands. A lot of speakers. Some people speak with, their eyes are very, very piercing.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are very overbearing when they talk. Like, so there's really understanding like what is the communication style
Mm-hmm.
non-verbally for the person you're communicating with.
Right.
So because some people could take it offensive, not understanding that's just how they communicate.
Right.
If they don't really get to know that person up front. So I think you need to understand like, okay, this person when they speak, they're very passionate.
Mm-hmm.
So their passion doesn't mean that they're angry.
Right.
That their hands going up. 'Cause I know when you speak like this sometimes. I'm like, whoa, bro, like
Yeah,
like
I was gonna bring that up. I remember an early argument
Yeah.
that we had in our relationship, and I was talking, and I'm trying to get it, and I'm speaking with passion,
Yeah.
and you were like, "Whoa, what's going on with all this? Like, what is this?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I just talk with my hands. Like, I'm really not trying to come at you like that." And you were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay." And from there on, you never took that wrong
Yes,
again.
I had to understand.
Because
was
I
like,
don't even
whoa,
notice.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, like when I'm talking with my hands, I don't even notice. Half the time I'm hitting the microphone, I'm like, "Oh, my hands are up." I don't even, that
Yes.
meme on Talladega Nights when he's like, "I don't know what to do with my hands." That's how I feel when I'm talking. If I have to hold my hands straight, I'm like,
Yes.
but yes, go to continue. Sorry.
No. So to answer your question, I think that has a lot to do with understanding like how to effectively communicate with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Because if 90% of our communication is nonverbal, and you don't understand their nonverbal communication style, then again you might take what they said. Kind of go back to our first point.
Mm-hmm. Take it wrong.
You're gonna take it wrong because you're like, whoa, you're coming off aggressive. I'm not even listening to what you're saying. I'm more looking at more
Experiencing
basically
what you're saying.
Definitely
Right.
that's experience. So that's what I would take on that.
And that can go the other way, because someone who's very passionate, who's talking like this, with somebody who's very like has no facial expression and very monotone when they're
Yeah.
talking, when they're expressing themselves, you have to know your partner's cues. You have to know their nonverbal cues.
You better know.
And that's so important. There's so much that's being said without speaking that if you're not picking up on those things, like there have been days where I just don't even realize that I'm in a funky mood because I'm just moving around, I'm doing stuff, and you're like, "Hey, what can I do to help you? What do you need?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I do have a need right now." But that was because you were picking up on things that I wasn't even saying. You're noticing, I'm shorter, or I'm sharper with my
Right.
words, or I'm moving faster, or I'm, kind of just, whatever. And you can see that and make the assumption, okay, there's a need happening right now that's
right.
not being spoken about. Let me try to help her figure that out, because sometimes we don't even really know what's happening. Sometimes there's emotions that are happening inside of us that we are responding to without even realizing that it's happening.
That's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So know
Default
your
mode. Yeah.
exactly. So know your partner's nonverbal clues. Also understanding the importance of touch.
Yeah. When you're communicating, touching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's important because that one touch is like, I understand.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like that changes the whole dynamic
Exactly.
of it versus listen to me. And we don't do that, by
Stop
the way. Right?
shaking, right? No,
but
none of that. But
Exactly.
but that also goes into also respecting boundaries.
By
So
far.
this is all such important parts of the way that you're communicating. When you're going to sit down with your spouse and have an important conversation, is your body leaned in? Are you leaned in listening? Are your
open.
knees
Yeah.
pointing towards them? Are you facing them?
Yeah.
Or is your body over here and they're talking over here and you're doing this?
That's good.
It feels like you're talking to the side of my face. I'm not listening. I'm not hearing you or
Right.
receiving what you have
or
to
I'm on
say.
the phone. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Exactly,
Yeah, uh-huh.
exactly. This all reads to me, you don't care about what I have to say,
Exactly.
right? Or the boundaries. If I'm saying something that I'm frustrated about, this is not the time to reach in and grab me. If I'm like, hey, I need space for a
Yes.
moment here,
Yeah.
right? And I think sometimes people misinterpret that. Like people in relationships, yes, touching, hugging, all of that is very important, but also sometimes people need their space or they start to feel smothered,
Yep.
right? And so understanding when somebody's kind of like a, when you're laying or snuggling and they're kind of readjusting or pulling away, it's like, oh, maybe they're not interested in snuggling right now. It's nothing against me. It's just they need their personal space
Yeah.
sometimes,
Or we're
right?
stimulated sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think it's just so important to also understand listening without words, understanding nonverbal affirmations, even
Okay.
like right now, I'm talking, you're doing this, you're nodding your head, you're listening,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being engaged, and also understanding how powerful silence can be. It can be powerful on two
Both
different
ways,
ways,
yeah.
right? In some moments, I just want you to sit in the space with me and just in silence of knowing like you're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm not trying to be the hero and fix it, but I'm hearing you and your pain is real and I'm in the space with you. I'm
Right.
willing to get into that with you. And then on the other hand, when it's like I'm not listening, I've got nothing to say. I don't want to hear anything you have to say and I'm just silent, right? So how do you understand those cues so that you can navigate around them? All super important things. And
Super.
also, I think one of the biggest important things is being aware of your body language, because sometimes we're so caught up reading the other person's body language
Yeah.
that we don't even realize how we're coming off in the argument or the situation, or the disagreement, right?
Yes, it's just a discussion. We
The
call
discussion,
it the discussion rabbit.
yes, the passionate discussions.
Well, I think it all comes down to, are we aware?
Yes.
Awareness is ultimately the answer, in this conversation. Are you aware of all these things happening at once, right?
Right.
And like, some examples. What's the game we used to play? Like head, like no voice.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes,
knees and
and
toes, right?
toes.
All
Yeah.
that game, right? So like, bringing it back to that. If you're looking for like, okay, like how can I improve this area for myself? It's like, all right, where's my head at? Is my head connected? And then what's the next? Head, shoulders. Are my shoulders all tight or is it relaxed so I can be able to receive, right? And then what's the next one after that?
Knees.
Knees, or is my knees what? Pointed,
Point.
kneecap to kneecap, and then it goes to toes, right? And then it doesn't make sense to play toesy with you when we're having a conversation or not, because it does that, right? Or am I doing things that are annoying, like tapping, in the conversation, or doing, this, or doing something weird with my
Fidgeting.
feet? Yeah, fidgeting with my feet. So that game alone that we played as kids can also help you in communication style
I
in
like
regards with
that.
your spouse.
I like that a lot. So
Yeah.
closing thoughts, babe?
Man, I think we talked about a lot today. I think we gave you definitely some action steps to be able to communicate on a whole different level, but most importantly, connect. That's one of the biggest things. And, to keep it healthy, I think it's very important to add this into your style.
Yes.
Maybe this is something you haven't done before. Maybe it's something you need to improve on. We're all improving in different capacities. But ultimately, if you know that you're going to be communicating for the rest of your life with your partner, I think it's something definitely you should invest in, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, I love it. As we're wrapping up, guys, with this episode, this was a very important one, as
Yeah.
you know, to every foundation of relationship. But,
I agree.
in this constant changing world that we have going on around here, strong families, strong values, strong leadership principles, relationships, all those things are becoming more and more endangered. And so we just want to encourage you to reach inside of yourself, find those things that are endangered and start to pull them out, let them shine, and let other people be inspired by them. Because at the end of the day, your survival is not just possible, it's not just important, but it's vital. And we just want to encourage you to just, keep that rare, excuse me, keep that rare, powerful parts of you and expose them to the world, because the world needs more of what we have to offer. So enjoyed this time with you all today. Make sure you come back and we will see you next time.